Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning. You've reached Venus Unplugged. This is your host, Llorraine Neithardt, and what we're doing here at Venus Unplugged is we explore as many aspects of Venus that we can archetypally in our personal life and dream myth, and what we are working with here is the myth of Persephone, the daughter who is abducted into the underworld by Hades. So, which is kind of interesting. You know, I'm never quite sure why I choose what I choose, but I just know when it's right. And also at this time where there is so much, where society and our culture is being pulled into Hades, into the dark side of life. Because these myths, they're living, they're eternal, they're pulsating, they're without beginning and without end, they are beyond time. So this is a whole, and part of the reason I'm doing the Venus Unplugged is so that for those who can listen, can begin to accept or learn or, even consider there's other realms that are equally as powerful and as real as the supposed reality that we're looking at. And just because we're looking at something, that doesn't make it real. So the Persephone is the initiation for everyone, whether it's the male's awareness of the anima or the woman being taken into having to accept the dangers of holding on to innocence. That's dangerous. We need to be able to work with the four angels, which I will talk about in a little bit. But what I want to get to here is that we're all called into a tour of duty into the underworld, into the dark places. That's part of what all this anger is about, what's going on, which could be incredibly constructive, and it's going to change the destiny of oneself and others. And this is everything that's happening, and all this anger that is coming up, which, if applied with a touch of wisdom and integration, being able to tell the difference between personal anger and archetypal anger, we are coming out of our complacency and our innocence. It is an initiation, and it feels like it's an initiation on a global level. So what I want to offer here, the gift that I wish to offer, is be able to see on another level and wake up to the holiness of what we're standing in the middle of. No one wakes up graciously. No one goes into therapy or soul making or mentoring because they're happy and it's good. Everyone comes in with a story, a descent, a betrayal. This is part of the deal. And the more we hold on to the child aspect of Persephone, the more conflict we're going to be in, because we are not becoming citizens. And it's only through the dark and the unknown that we're initiated. We're not initiated by light, by what we can see, by what we think we think. Who's thinking the thoughts? A lot of what goes on in people is opinions, not balanced discernment and justice. Justice is a very interesting principle and archetype, because only justice can balance justice, and that's what it's about. So with Persephone, which went over a little bit last week, one of the things that Jung points out is in the Persephone archetype of the innocent one, she's also the healer. She's also the sensitive psychic side of our lives. That one of the shadow sides of the Persephone aspect of ourselves is pride and inflation about her delicateness and her innocence. Now that can sound very harsh, particularly if we don't want to look at our rage. But that's what's coming up. An unknown rage. And it shocks people. And of course, it's the other person or event, historical event. That is a factor. But the rage, that's you. That's what's going on in oneself. So when we begin to recognize that it's kind of the tyranny of the wounded or the tyranny of the crippled. How could you hurt me? How could you do this once again? Meanwhile, we all know people who, make a lifestyle out of being wounded. And after a while, you just don't want to hear it because it's like, hey, man, you got to, pull up some understanding of what's happening. So, and if you call out a victim as yo, wait a second, this is the single-handed chant. You become the new person who's persecuting the victims. Now, when I'm speaking about this, I'm talking about the inner world. Those are my concerns. The outer world, it's an interesting reality. But the inner world, where all of this takes place, that's yours. That's ours individually. So, you see, only Hades or Pluto can claim the victim. Because Hades is the aspect of ourself that drags us into a genuine encounter, which results in the death of the ego and the ego that's attached to the permanent innocence, or wants the sweetness and light, or why can't we have world peace, or we misplace often the pride of the victim. So in this Persephone challenge, that's her moment of truth. She needs to put away this innocence and go down or within to that secret place that the Persephone in us does not want to face. She wants to love, but it is only through going into the underworld, through the cold and unmoving depths that is unconnected to life. That's the feeling of the underworld. To face the shadow. Remember, she goes into the underworld core, Kore, the 7-year-old, but she comes up queen. There's a lot going on there, people. And that's why we're being called to one's sovereignty, to our self-rule, which is what sovereignty is. That is the alignment and the sacred oath to honor what is holy. Okay, so the shadow of the maiden of Persephone is actually her enormous rage and a longing for pure, all-encompassing power. And that is very hard for anyone who identifies with the victim. But if we can just even consider, wait a second, all right, on this side, I feel that I am at the effects of whatever is going on in the world or whatever is going on within myself. And the more we don't know about our inner world, of course, we feel a mess. But the innocence got to go. We're procreators. It's like saying that you're an artist and not doing art. Whatever that might be. It may be the art of life, or drawing, or dancing, or hopping, or whatever it may be. We claim authenticity. We claim power. But we will not look at the drive that the power is. And the reason why it is dark is because it is unknown to ourselves. Now, if we know I am going to pick up my power and I am going to use it, that's different. We know what we're doing. We're not a victim. I'm about ready to spank you right upside your head. Or I am going to roar from my heart, not yell and scream and get hysterical, but make a roaring statement. This will stop now. Not punishing, not victimization. I will draw my strength, and we cannot draw the strength of power from innocence. They're opposites. And that is what is always going on, these opposites, and what needs to be balanced. So how do we recognize, the dark side? What can happen is because we're disowning the power, or we think power is dark or negative, right? So we're going to attract, The mother's usually a good pin the tail on the donkey is the first candidate. The evil mother, the dark mother, the witch mother, which does and can have great truth to it. But there comes a point where we have to take that power back, or take the gold back from the dark mother and say, no, I'm not going to be a reflection of this victimization and innocence. I'm going to absorb this and see, where is that within me? Where does the dark mother reside, or the witch, or the I don't know if anybody's ever read Dion Fortune's Psychic Self-Defense. It's one of the first books. Oh God, I think she wrote this in 1930. It's an excellent book on how to protect oneself from the dark sides, or the sides of evil, the psychic attachments that build great difficulty in our lives, so we're not aware of it, or black magic plots, which can be part of our life, but we have to see it within ourselves. There is not understanding that dark witch that we must use wisely to overcome the obstacles and to become real and to become whole. A lot of times when people do past lives, it's like those are interested in astrology, the planet Uranus is going to show you in your chart your post-traumatic stress from previous incarnations. Isn't that fun? Like this one wasn't enough. Sometimes they're generational, or it will tell you what you're bringing from incarnation to incarnation. What is being worked out here, because that's your button, baby. When that gets triggered, you're either down for the count, or screaming like a banshee, or turned into a hulk of being enraged. Right? But when we have that intense response, you hit an archetype. Personal rage, archetypal rage. Personal rage, you can shut up. Personal rage, you can go like, whoa, okay, what's going on here? Archetypal rage, you can't. You're gone. You're possessed. The rage of the Great Mother has taken over. So Persephone's real issue that she doesn't want to deal with, and of course it doesn't, it's uncomfortable. But we have to wake, and that's what's happening in the world. We're all being called forth to wake up, okay? So her real issue is the power. The power refuses to own, and power that you give away, and projecting it onto other people. Sometimes, the Persephone type will conjure up somebody else to be their savior. All of that is a refusal to marry Hades or Pluto, to have a union in the dark regions of Psyche. She wants Daddy Zeus to protect her and save her, or Demeter, the loving mother, to protect and mourn. Now, meanwhile, Demeter, her mother, is up screaming and yelling and carrying on, looking for a daughter who could take this, because Demeter and Persephone are opposites of one another within the same goddess. So this is it's one of the most important stories, myths, that we're unconsciously living or consciously living. Hopefully the consciousness will realize that the challenge for all of us is to unite the dark and the light of the goddess in oneself. So these experiences of what's going on now in the world is an incredible opportunity to say, wait a second, I am going to learn how to use my unprocessed power drive to gain power. Power that we've earned, power that is belonging to us, not to overpower. Because that's what we're seeing. A lot of people are feeling like overwhelmed and overpowered, and how could this happen? And, it's the way of the world, actually. So Persephone woman, when she begins to recognize or comes to terms with the witch and the killer in herself, I could easily kill, but I choose not to. Know that you can, and know that you choose not to. And the same when you reverse the killing on yourself, which are the thoughts and fantasies of suicide. I'm going to kill myself. That's a killing. You can feel that. You can have those fantasies, not act out on it. We all have it. And it's not, in the moral world, whatever that is, that's bad. No, it's not. We have these energies within us, and if we're judging good and bad, we're never going to get anywhere. This is why we only deal with one side of an archetype or one side of ourselves. So we're being called to renounce our maidenly self and get a portion of our life going out of the underworld. And then it is in the underworld where we hide. It's the mystery. And there are some things that we can't speak about because they are sacred. But we know we've just had an encounter. We may not be able to find words for it because it doesn't belong to the world of words and light. So there's in certain traditions, okay, in the Kabbalistic traditions, there's one way that we deal with this power and rage of the Persephone. Now, of course, we feel the power and rage more intensely because we don't want to feel it. And the more we don't want to feel it, the more it's going to be there. Just like we say, I don't want to think that, and the more we say we don't want to think that, that's what we can't stop thinking. Or you're whistling a tune and you want it to get out of your head, and the more you want it to get out of your head, because that's the will and the ego that's saying, the more it stays. So we need to understand, particularly with anger, that we need to turn and understand that what is this balance? That any one of us can become angry. That's easy. But being angry with the right person in the right proportion at the right time for the right reason and in the right way. This is not in everyone's reach because that takes power. You can't be innocent and powerful at the same time. They're opposites of one another. So whatever we usually get enraged when the expectations that we have on others doesn't exactly pan out. And sometimes you don't even know you have these expectations. It's a complete shock. How could they do this? Well, how could they say this to me or about me or vice versa, right? Because you had no idea. Or you're holier than thou, and someone makes a comment, and you lose your cookie. It's like, whoa. You were expecting that you were holier than thou. Not always true. So we have a fall. So there's when we begin to, for those of you that wish to take up the task, we can begin to realize that we need to learn how to set anger or the power drive into a workable, balanced way of being in this world. So there's no such thing as an ideal anger. That's not what I'm talking about, although some people may think that. Or they'll say, well, meditate. Don't meditate. Meditate on because you need to understand something, but don't use meditation as a way to hide from your righteous rage. Or it may be, or even more important, your unrighteous rage. When you measure the level of your rage to the external experience, sometimes it doesn't match. Definitely doesn't match your internal experience. And you say, oh my God, I'm completely beside myself when we come out of our archetypal seizure. That's the time you've got gold in your hand at that time. Wait, I just became aware of something. I had no idea. So you need to understand that emotional wounds, they blind the heart. So when the heart is blind, we're not authentic, and we really can't figure out what we need to do. So we need to understand that there is a way that we can call on. We all have 4 angels that balance each other out. There's one angel in the front, and there's one angel to the right side, and another angel to the left side, and the last one is behind us. The angel that's in front is there to stop us saying, take it easy, wait, what's the hurry? then the one to the rear pushes us ahead, saying, face it, face it. Have the courage to go for it. Don't back out now. Then the one to the left, near the heart, says, forget it, man. Let it be. And then the one to the right says, remember, don't let it go by, because you have a memory. So when we're turning to the impulses of, which is basically advance, retreat, remember, forget. These are the fundamental calibrating our reactions. And it has to do with instinct, which is the key to the human ability to act and react externally. And when we do nothing about a situation, actually we set off types of feuds because of internal passivity or aggressiveness. So when we don't develop sufficiently the different emotional reactions, then we're just stuck in the underworld. But this is what we're learning in this place that people say is hell and we shouldn't go there. No, we should go there, because we're going to get dropped into it anyway, so we might as well go willingly rather than squealing like little pigs, So when we look at it in terms of like the angels at our sides, so let's say the angel of forgetting and the angel of remembering, this is an ethical thought and a justification for our reactions. We learn to see, and we all do it. Sometimes you just do it neurotically. I'm going to, kill them, or I'm going to complain, or they'll see. And then, oh my God, what's I going to do? I'm so frightened. Life is so big, I'm so little. We still have to work. And where are we going to get? You're not going to get this power from heaven. You're going to get it from the underworld, from the unknown parts, from the place you don't want to go. And this is why these conflicts can take us so long, because I don't want to go there. I don't want to look at that. I only want the good. Well, that is definitely a recipe for disaster, because these dimensions, they actually belong to the same ethical order. And part of being ethical or moral is working with these conflicts. But we need to understand that this is true of all of us. I always think it's so interesting that, when our God and our image of the divine, or whatever goddess or whatever it might be, agrees with you to hate the same people you hate, or hate the same thoughts you hate, doesn't that make you a little suspicious? And we innocently all do that. Well, of course I'm right and they're wrong, and therefore they should perish. No. That's your ego talking. That's not your goddess or your God, which is love for all. So we're coming out of, in a sense, an age of innocence, and we're going to learn how to work with our heart and with our strengths and our weaknesses. We're only going to be able to draw that from the unknown parts. So our perception of reality is one thing. The outer reality is made. How do we perceive that? When there's a balance among, what pushes us forward and what pulls us back and what makes us forget and what makes us remember. So it's kind of, we're being pulled in all these different ways. And if we understand what is pulling us Then we can have what's called active imagination and work with those opposing forces or those opposing angels until we come into a balanced state and then act out of the balanced state, not the extreme. Because we're acting from the extreme and one-sided, there's no authenticity, and there will be no change in the outcome. So we're all being called forth. We're all doing a little tour of duty and understanding the way of the underworld. Till next week. Bye-bye.
Napa know-how.
A Napa guy knows more isn't always better, unless we're talking about full-size vans. These beasts do more than get you from A to B. They have so much space a man can live in it. With shag carpeting, waterbed, and a sweet lava lamp, these mobile abodes have all the comforts of home. With quality parts and plenty of Napa know-how, you can keep the original tiny house running longer, stronger. That's Napa know-how.
Napa know-how.